In this tutorial, we're going to cover the text functions in Excel. If you click on the formulas bar, remember all of the formulas are grouped into categories, and this is the text category. I can't cover all of these, but I'll cover a lot of them. They're also covered in Winston's chapter 6, I believe it is. So I'm just going to go through and give you an example of each. Why are text formulas important? It's because when we get our data, we need to clean it up. Sometimes we don't control where our data comes from. If we do control our data input, like I talked about week before last, or the lesson before last, about validation, we can use validation to try to minimize the number of errors. But sometimes, it just can't be avoided. User error happens. And so the first step of data analysis is data cleanup, and sometimes called data auditing. So we can write formulas to help us with cleanup. If I have a spreadsheet with thousands or tens of thousands of records, I can't take the time to look through it all by eye and try to catch the errors. I'm not going to catch them all, and it's going to take me forever. So sometimes we use these, or all the time we use these formulas to clean up our data and make sure everything is consistent and validated. So the first formula we're going, or first first formula we're going to look at here is our function, I should say. We're going to write a formula with the left function. Um, left means to return the characters starting from the left side of the string. What we call text string sometimes. It's the term we use. A text string, sometimes call it string for short. Um, so starting from the left, so we type in the function, and the first thing it asks for is the text that we're looking at, and then how many characters do we want to pull out of there, and we can say 4, and we should get reg, right? R-E-G-G. We're looking at this name right here. The right is exactly the same, just pulling from the right. Once again, we specify, my equal sign. We specify the same cell and number of characters, and now it starts from the right, right? L-E-R, from the right. Trim spaces is helpful. It takes out all of the extra double spaces or triple spaces in texts. So in this particular example, we have 2 spaces. We should only have 1 space between the Reggie and the Miller. So it returns just the 1 space corrected. Len will tell us how many characters is in a text string. Like that. There's 15 characters in this text string. Mid is similar to right and left, except we can start from any character within the text string, within the middle of the text string. So mid, and it wants us to pull the 5 characters starting after the second space. So here's the text. The start number, I believe, is 9. That puts us, the second space is character 9. And the number of characters is 5. So there you go. It's a space plus MILL. Now, let's say we want to find a particular character in a text string, like doing a find in Microsoft Word. We could go up to the up here and look for the find function, but we can also write a formula for it too. So find, we want to find the first space, equals find. And what do we want to find? Well, if it's text, we put it in quotation marks. So quotation mark space. And then here's the text. And then we want to start with the first character in the string. It tells us that the first space is character number 7. Now we can find the first R. And the find command is case sensitive. So if I type a capital R, it will find the first capital R, lowercase r, first lowercase r. So equals find. And we want to find the text lowercase r within this text string. And we'll start with the first character. And it says that character 15, which is the end, last R after Miller, is correct. Now, if we use a search function, it is not case sensitive. So we can do exactly the same thing as the earlier one with find. And it's going to return to us a 1. Let me format this right. A 1 because it's not case sensitive. So it saw the capital R and it gave us a 1. We can combine text a few different ways, but the simplest way, kind of the old way of doing it, and I'll show you another way to do it in a minute, but the old way to do it is just to use the and sign. So we say that kind of like adding two cells together, but we're doing this with text. So we want to say that this cell equals Reggie and a space and his last name. All right, so now we have Reggie Miller. That's the way to combine two text cells together. So how to replace GG with NN if we wanted to do that? We can use the replace command. Oops. So this function allows us to replace part of a text with new letters or new text. So the name Reggie has two G's in it, and we can change it to two N's. So here is the old text. We want to start with the first letter in the text, and the number of characters is 2, and the new text is going to be an N. So what it did is it replaced the first two characters, not the GG. So we have to change where we're going to start at. We're not going to start with character 1. We're going to start with character 3. And now we get Rennie Miller. Okay? That's correct. We can change the text string to all lowercase, all uppercase, proper case, meaning every word is capitalized. Equals lower. All right, it's all lowercase now. This is helpful sometimes because sometimes data gets entered either lowercase, uppercase, or a mix or different ways, and so this just corrects the formatting. And proper. You can see the 4 ways that it has formatted Reggie Miller here. All lowercase, all uppercase, every word capitalized. Here we can use the substitute command. We can also use, find replace in Excel, but if we want to write a formula, we can use substitute command to replace all characters within a cell or even a range of cells. So equals substitute, and the text that we're going to substitute is the space. Oops, I think we need to specify, right, the location of the cell first. Then the old text is a space. The new text, we're going to replace it with a star. And instance number, I'm not sure I remember what that is. We'll just put 1. I replaced one star instead of all of them. I think if we put 2, it's going to do the second space that it finds, not the first one, but the second space. I think if we leave this off, it's going to do all of them. So the final criteria here is unnecessary. It's just, it's not required. It's optional. Anytime in a formula syntax, if you see parentheses around a part of the formula, this means it's optional. It's not required. So to replace all of the stars All the spaces with stars, we had to just leave that off. And like I just showed you, the third one, right? I just copied the cell formula like that. I guess there's 3 spaces in there instead of 2. So there you go. It just replaced the third one in this example by using the optional criteria. Right, that goes through a lot of the different text functions. Let's use some of these in an example. So let's pretend like someone sent me all of this data mixed together in one cell. It has the product ID, the product description, and the price in one cell. And I need to separate it out. So the first thing I do is I use the trim function because I want to take out any double spaces or triple spaces, right? I'm going to pull that down, fill it in. So now it cleans it up. That's the first step. Second step, I want to pull out the product ID as a separate cell. For this, we will use the left, right? Because the product ID is on the left. It's on the left side. And number of characters, the product ID is 12 characters. So starting from the left, we're going to take the first 12 characters and then drag that down. And now we have the product ID separated from the product description and the price. Now the price is on the right side. And if you look at it, all the prices are the same number of characters in this example. So that makes it easy for us. We can go right. And we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 characters. That's 6 characters. 1, 2. Oh, I know what the thing is here. We have to use the value command because we want this to be a value and a number, not text, right? We want this to be number, not text. Still got $4. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe it's 7 characters instead of 6. Let's see here. B26. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I actually don't want to use B26. I want to use my trimmed output C26. There we go. That's what the problem was. I wasn't using my trimmed output. So C26 and 7 characters. Let's pull that down and see how we got it. And it came across as a value. So this function converts text to values. Remember I said sometimes you can store a number as text, this is a case of that because this is one long text string. So we want to make sure that we bring it over as a value, and I've already formatted this as a currency, so it falls right in. Now the product description is a little more difficult because it's in the center. It's in the middle here between the product ID and the dollar amount. So, and not every product description is the same length, right? It's not the same length. So this gives us a bit of a problem. We have to do a calculation here. And I already put the formula in here. I'm using the mid function. And you see I got C26 selected, which is my trimmed output. And then, oops, I need to take off this parenthesis. And then the start number is 13. Why did I put 13? I put 13 because I know that the first 12 characters is the product ID. So I can start at the space after the product ID. So we're going to start at number 13. I then use the len command to give me the total count of all the characters in the trimmed cell. right? The total number of characters in the trim cell. And then I know that the number of characters in the amount, the dollar amount, the price of it is 6. And I know that the number of characters in the serial number, product ID, is 12. So I subtract 6, I subtract 12 from the total count. And I start right after the product ID. And this should grab just the product description. So pull that down. It does. I'm a little bit confused why this is 7. 6 should work. Yeah, that's right. Sorry about that. 6 does work. What it's doing there is just grabbing the extra space when I put in 7. So 6 is good, right? To explain again, we use mid, starting at the 13th character, taking the total number of characters in the string, minus the 6 characters for the price, minus the 12 characters for the product ID, and what you're left with is the number of characters and the product description. Ta-da, right? Pretty cool. Now, this function is a way of combining cells together the same way that I showed you earlier with AND, right? With AND, this is a way of joining text cells together. Well, concatenation is kind of a cleaner way to do it when you have, especially when you have more cells to combine. It's a little easier. Concatenate, concatenate, I think is how you say it. Right, and so, and this one is very easy. We can just grab these 3, arrange, I believe. No, I didn't like the range. We had to put commas between each one. So that gave us a head start. D26, E26, and F26. So what I did there is I combined all 3 of these cells together to get us back to the original trim cell as a kind of check, right? So if you had the opposite problem, if you had all this data in 3 separate cells and you wanted it in one cell, you could use this function to combine it. Now let's go on to the next example. So here we have someone who's given us data, 3 values that represent sales for 3 different regions, east, north, and south, and they've separated each of the regions by a plus sign within the cell. So the first value is 10, is east, the middle one is 300, is north, and the one on the right is 400, is south. We need to separate it into different columns. And the issue is that it's not the same number of characters for each value. So we're going to have to do some math. First off, let's find the first plus sign. And we'll do that by using the find command. So find, and we want to find the plus sign. And we want to find it within this cell. And we'll start with number 1, which is optional, by the way. You don't need it. By default, it will start at the beginning from the left. So it gives me 3. 3 is the first. The character 3 is where the first plus sign is. And these 2, it's character 2. And the final one is also character 3. It's because in these 2, the first number is a single-digit number, where in this one, the first number is a double-digit number. So it pushes the plus sign over 1. Now let's find the second end. We'll also use find for this, or second plus sign, I should say. Once again, we're looking for the plus sign, and we're looking for it within this text. But here's where that start number can be useful, because we know where the first plus sign is, and we want to find the next one. So we don't want to start at the beginning. We want to start after the first one. And so if I just click here, where we have our formula, our first find, the first plus sign, right? We get that, but what happens is we get the same value. So I have to click there and need to add 1. the space after the first plus sign. And there is our second plus sign. 7755. Good, so we know where the first plus sign is and the second plus sign is. Now let's find the value for east, for the first number. And this is simple, we just use left. And the number of characters is going to be either one character or two characters, right? It's either going to be a double-digit character or a single-digit character. If I first I got to highlight the text, and then if I put in 1, let's do this for example, I'm going to get 1. The actual value is 10. So I can't put in just 1. Let's say if I put in 2, yeah, I get a 10, but when I pull it down, I'm going to get a 4 plus and a 3 plus. So there's not one value that works. So I need to do a calculation. And I know the first plus is at character 3. So all I have to do is click that and do a -1. Right? I want the character before the plus. Now I get my 10. Pull that down. And now I have the right numbers. 10, 4, 3, 18. Good. Now for north, we're going to use mid. Going to, sorry, I need to equals mid. Select well, this isn't just going well, is it? In my parenthesis. Mid. Got the, no, I don't want that one. Yes, I do want that one. Now the start number, once again, I don't really know where it's going to start. It's going to start after the first plus sign. That's where we start at, after the first plus sign. Not at the first plus sign, but after it. So last time we subtracted 1, this time we add 1. So that's where we're starting at. And now we need to calculate the number of characters. The number of characters equals the number of characters between the two plus signs. So we can say that it equals, maybe it equals 7, right? Equals that number minus that number. That's the difference. And we forgot to do a -1. Let's see if that comes out right. So we did get that right. 300, 36.2, 23, and 1. Great. Just to explain again, the mid, this is the cell where the text is. This is the start of the first plus sign. And we're going to add 1 to start on the very next character after the first plus sign. Then we take the second plus sign minus the first plus sign to get negative and -1 to get the length of the value that we're looking for. Great. Now to get south, we need to have the total number of characters. So we're going to use len again to get the total number of characters in the string. And then for south, we're going to use right and select our text like we have been doing. Now we need to do the math and figure out how many characters from the right do we need to pull from the text string. And the way we do that is take the total number of characters, which we have here, I believe minus, maybe it is the second plus, right? So what's left over after the second plus is the number of digits in the south value. Now we may need to either add or subtract 1 here because we don't want to count the plus as well. But let's see. So we didn't need to subtract 1 actually. Yep, we didn't need to subtract 1. There we go. We got all the correct values, right? So to get south, we took the total number of characters in the string minus the number of characters up to the second plus. So we just subtracted out everything from the second plus, which just leaves the number of characters left over from the string. I hope that shows you how these functions can help us to clean things up, but separate text. But we can use these in VBA. We can use these in formulas in a lot of different ways to modify the contents of our cells. Now, there's a lot easier way to do this than what I just showed you. So I'm doing the exact same thing, but a different method that's a lot easier. Here's the same 4 cells, the same 4 text strings. I'm going to go up here to data and click on text to columns. And then I'll click on delimited, which means that the text is separated by a symbol, either a comma, a space, or some other kind of symbol. And then I'm going to click other. I'm going to type in the word plus, or the plus character, not a word. Use that as my separator. And then click next and finish. And what it's done is it's read that plus sign and used it to make the cut between the different columns, right? Oftentimes you'll hear the term column delimited file, which is often how a database file is exported from an application. And when you import it, it uses the commas or the spaces or some other symbol between the columns to separate them. So when you open the data up in a text file, it looks just like one long, never-ending, string of text with no spaces and no separation. But when you import it into Excel, it can automatically separate it out for you. And later on in another lesson, we'll talk more about how to import data into Excel. But this is just a way, if you have data that has a consistent pattern to it, you might be able to simply use this built-in feature of Excel, text to columns, to sort it out for you. Final thing I just want to bring up again is flash fill. I mentioned flash fill a few lessons ago. I just want to bring it up again here as another way to quickly clean up your data. Last time I used an example of numbers in an order, 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of thing. So actually, I don't want this to be here. Delete this. Delete. Okay. Just this last example here. So Excel is pretty magical in that if I, for example, if I want to use flash fill to help me to separate the contents of a text string into different columns, which is what pretty much we've been doing this whole time in this lesson, I can type in Tricia, right? And if I hit enter, and then I press Control E, look at that. It knows what I'm doing based on my input. If I go over here and type Lopez, hit enter, and Control E, it does the last name. Look at that. Saved me a whole bunch of time and typing, and also I know that it couldn't have made any typos in me trying to retype the text, right? So another quick way to work with your data to clean it up. It will also do this with something like email. So let's take, for example, and create an email for Lopez at xyz.com. Enter, and then Control E, and look, it created emails for everybody based on the same format. Pretty cool. Excel really has a lot of power behind it, a lot of features behind it. They keep adding to it and making it more and more useful for us. Anything that you see that you can write in a formula or that you can do as a command like Control E, flash fill, you can automate these things in macros and VBA later on in the course. You can automate all this stuff as if you're doing it in the Excel sheet, even though it's just a series of commands that are running in the background. All right, that's the end of this lesson, and I'll get started on the next one.